I remember the 38 hurricane because I came home from school. I wasn't quite 8 years old. The wind was blowing very hard, extremely hard. And I said, I better get my chores done quick. And I did, and my mother said, we were going down to the harbor. We went down there and went to my grandmother's house, and we stood on the front porch, and the tide was getting higher and higher, and my father and my grandfather went to put some more lines on his boat, and his boat was tied very close to where the fish market is now. Well, of course, there was no bulkhead. They were all individual docks. And there was a big sandbank that ran where the road is now. There was no road down there. And you walked across the sandbank on planks that were laid in the sand and down to the boathouses that were on the harbor. And they were right on the sandbank trying to get a line out. The tide was just coming higher and higher. And there was a full of tide alongside my father's boat from New Bedford. And he cut my father's dory adrift so it would drift over to the sandbank and they could use it to come out. And they just got hold of the dory, the sides of the dory, and there was my father and my grandfather and Jimmy Morgan's father. And the sandbank just went right out from under them. And here they were floating in the water, hanging onto the dory. So they climbed into the dory and they decided there was no use to go out to put lines on the boat. So my father started rowing towards the shore. They didn't have far to go. They were about halfway across and one of the oars broke. So my father passed the single oar to my grandfather, who was in the stern, and he started sculling in the same direction. But of course they kept being blown off all the time because the wind had come southwest then. And there was so much water in the air, whether it was from rain or from just being blown up. And anyway, we watched them go out of sight, headed towards the first point to the east of the harbor, which is where Leopold Manus's and those houses are. And my mother said to me, come on, we'll go down Menemsha Road and we'll pick them up. So we walked down to about where the deli is now, which is where the car was. And the water there was up over my knees. And we got in the car and got it started and went up and we started going down Menemsha Road. And my mother kept saying, they'll be around the next corner. They'll be around the next corner. She must have been scared out of her wits, but I was too small to realize it. I figured, oh, sure, they'll be here, And finally, we came around the corner, and here they were, the three of them, walking up. And my father told me that when they got up by Leopold Manus's house, he stretched out as far as he could and grabbed the corner post of the porch. And he said if they'd been 8 inches further out, he'd never been able to get it. And that they'd been gone because they were just bound,
Right out into the sand.
Yeah. And I don't remember anything more until the next morning when it was all over. They shut Menemsha off. Only the fishermen could go down there. And we were down there trying to salvage stuff. There were, it seemed like hundreds of people waiting at Menemsha Road and guys with shotguns telling them they couldn't come down there,
Your father's boathouse, did those get blown away?
Oh, those were demolished, yeah. They were demolished, so were most of the boats. All the docks were washed out. In the 38 hurricane, I think the only boathouse that was left was Bill Hand's, which was a 2-story one. Everything all along the harbor, the only thing that was left was Carl Reed's store, but it just took everything else. The 38 changed the whole waterfront. For probably 2 months afterwards, it was common practice, anything you found afloat or ashore on the beach or anything, that you weren't sure who it belonged to, you would bring it and dump it by Carl Reed's store. And there was a whole pile of stuff there. And guys would come along and go through it, see if any of their stuff was there, and then they'd find somebody going off with somebody else's stuff. I can remember a big pile of oars and oarlocks and bailers and life jackets and you name it, it was there, lobster pots. And Rodney Dutcher, he was a reporter for the New York Times, and he started a collection for the fishermen. and the Red Cross kicked in some money. That's why the yacht part of the bulkhead is called Dutcher Dock. They named it in honor of him. I remember the big dedication we had when they dedicated the dock to him. Everett Saltonstall was the governor, and he came down to Woods Hole, and they brought him from Woods Hole to Menemsha in a Coast Guard lifeboat, and they had a big platform down in the parking lot, and everybody got up and made speeches.